I didn't say a word during her 20-minute rant. I just unfolded the property survey and watched 47 homeowners realize they'd been using my road for free. Picture this: HOA President Patty standing at that podium, waving around a $70,000 fine for my unauthorized road improvements, telling 60 neighbors how I was destroying their property values. She had the PowerPoint, the fake engineering reports, even brought 3 lawyers to intimidate me into submission. This woman had spent 6 months making my life hell, measuring my grass with actual rulers, fining me for my daughter's car being improperly parked in my own driveway, threatening to have my house condemned because I dared to fix dangerous potholes with my own money. But what Patty didn't know was that every single expensive car in that parking lot had driven across my private property to get there. The road she was so concerned about? I'd inherited it from my uncle, who developed the entire neighborhood. Let me back up. I'm Jake Morrison, 52 years old, retired civil engineer who thought he'd found the perfect quiet neighborhood to rebuild his life after a messy divorce. I bought a modest ranch house in Willowbrook Estates in 2019. The selling points: good schools for my teenage daughter Emma's weekend visits, tree-lined streets, and what seemed like a reasonable HOA. Willowbrook Estates sits like a little island of suburban dreams, 47 homes built in the 80s and 90s, connected to the outside world by a single winding road called Maple Grove Lane. When I first moved in, it was mostly original families. But over the past few years, gentrification had crept in. Tech workers and real estate investors started buying up houses, turning friendly relationships into next-door app complaints. Enter Patricia Hendress. Everyone called her Patty, but trust me, she was about as sweet as a parking ticket. 48 years old, real estate agent, drove a white BMW that she parked at precisely the same angle every day. Patty moved into the neighborhood in 2020 and immediately appointed herself as Neighborhood Standards Coordinator. I'm talking about a woman who literally measured grass height with an actual ruler. The whole thing started in spring 2024. We'd had a brutal winter that left Maple Grove Lane looking like a moonscape, potholes deep enough to lose a small dog in. Being an engineer, I could see this was only going to get worse. I sent a polite email to the HOA board offering to coordinate professional repairs. Patty's response came back within an hour: all modifications require board approval and proper permits. 6 weeks later, there was still no board meeting scheduled. The road kept getting worse. Mrs. Chen, the sweet 78-year-old who lived 3 houses down, nearly fell into a pothole while getting her mail. That's when I decided enough was enough. I called my contractor buddy Tom, and we spent a weekend properly filling the worst spots. High-quality materials, proper preparation, the works. Cost me $3,200 out of my own pocket, but at least people could drive safely again. The neighbors were immediately grateful. I posted before and after photos in our neighborhood Facebook group. That was my first mistake. Within 48 hours, I had a formal cease and desist letter in my mailbox. Patty accused me of unauthorized infrastructure modification and threatened legal action. She claimed my repairs didn't match HOA aesthetic standards and demanded I remove all materials and restore the original condition. Original condition? You mean the potholes that were literally dangerous? The neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Older residents supported me, but the newer wealthy residents sided with Patty. Rules are rules, they said. Patty called an emergency HOA board meeting for 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, when working people are actually working. I walked into that community center meeting room to find Patty set up like she was prosecuting a war crimes trial. She had a PowerPoint presentation titled Neighborhood Infrastructure Violations, a case study. This resident, she said, not even using my name, has created serious liability issues and threatens our property values with unsanctioned repairs. The board voted 3-0 to fine me $500 for unauthorized modifications plus $200 per day until the repairs were professionally removed. I decided to fight back with facts. I showed up to the next scheduled board meeting with a full engineering report, traffic count data, safety analysis, material specifications, the works. I'm offering to donate this work to the HOA, I said calmly. These repairs exceed county road standards. Patty's response? She pulled out her own engineering report from her brother-in-law. turns out this guy's only certifications were in lawn care. His professional assessment was literally written on landscaping company letterhead. But Patty doubled down. She raised my fine to $1,000 plus $500 per day. And here's the kicker, she instituted a new emergency protocol requiring all future repairs to use HOA-approved contractors. Want to guess who the only approved contractor was? Her husband Richard's golf buddy, who charged 3 times the normal rate. My daughter Emma, who's 17 and way smarter with technology than her old man, helped me create a detailed PowerPoint exposing the fake engineering report. 3 board members resigned that night out of sheer embarrassment. But Patty scrambled to recruit replacement board members from her wealthy neighbors. Within 2 weeks, she had a board packed with her allies. By this point, I was facing $8,500 in fines and climbing by $500 every day. Other neighbors started coming to me privately, sharing their own horror stories. Patty had cited people for having the wrong shade of beige paint. She'd measured fence heights with a tape measure. She'd fined an elderly veteran for having his American flag up past sundown. Patty's harassment campaign kicked into high gear. She started driving past my house multiple times a day, taking photos of my property. She cited me for grass slightly exceeding the 3.5-inch maximum. Yes, she actually got on her hands and knees with a ruler. She fined me for Emma's car being parked improperly in my own driveway. But I'm not one to take harassment lying down. I installed security cameras and started documenting everything. That's when I discovered something beautiful: selective enforcement. Patty's wealthy friends had identical violations she completely ignored. That's when Mrs. Chen knocked on my door one evening, bringing homemade cookies. Patty tried to make me remove my rose garden, she said quietly. The one my husband planted 30 years ago before he passed. But I still have all the original HOA documents from when we moved in. Would you like to see them? Mrs. Chen's late husband had been one of the original HOA founding members. She had copies of every covenant, every amendment, every board meeting minute going back to 1983. When I spread those documents across my kitchen table, I realized most of Patty's current rules had never been properly voted on. But I needed to dig deeper. I spent the next weekend at the county recorder's office tracing property records and utility easements. That's where I found something interesting about our subdivision's development history. The original developer had retained ownership of several key parcels when the neighborhood was built. When the original developer's company went bankrupt in 1995, their assets got sold at auction. The road ownership transferred to some holding company I'd never heard of. That holding company dissolved in 2001, and their assets transferred to Morrison Development LLC. Same last name as mine. Same last name as my Uncle Bob, who'd been a small-time property investor before he died in 2018. I rushed home and started digging through the boxes of paperwork Uncle Bob had left me. Buried in Uncle Bob's estate paperwork was a deed to Maple Grove Lane private roadway easement. Every single car that entered our neighborhood, including Patty's precious BMW, was driving across property that I had inherited. I sat in my kitchen that night holding the deed in hands that were shaking with a mixture of disbelief and righteous fury. Patty had been fining me for maintaining my own damn road. First thing the next morning, I called a real estate attorney. 2 days later, sitting in her office, I got the confirmation: Mr. Morrison, you definitely own that road. The title chain is clear, and you've been legally responsible for its maintenance all along. The HOA never had any authority to regulate it. But here's what I didn't do: immediately march over to Patty's house and wave the deed in her face. Because Patty was about to give me something much better than a quick victory. She raised my total fines to $25,000 and scheduled an emergency community meeting to discuss the problem resident. She even invited the local TV news crew to cover what she called a neighborhood dispute. The meeting was packed, over 60 neighbors showed up, plus the Channel 7 news team. Patty had prepared a 20-minute PowerPoint about maintaining community standards, complete with enlarged photos of my roadwork labeled as unauthorized modification. This resident's defiance threatens everyone's property values, she declared to the cameras, gesturing at me like I was some kind of common criminal. We need community support for necessary enforcement action. I sat quietly in the back row, taking notes and letting her dig her hole deeper. When she finished, I requested permission to respond to her accusations. Patty, probably expecting some kind of broken apology, smugly agreed. I walked to the front of the room carrying a folder of documents and unfolded a surveyor's map on the table. The room went dead silent except for the hum of the news camera. Before we discuss road violations, I said calmly, let's clarify who actually owns the road. The expression on Patty's face when I showed the deed was priceless. Pure shock, like someone had just told her Santa Claus was real and he was suing her for trespassing. I explained everything clearly. I had inherited the road from Uncle Bob. Every resident had been using my private property for access, and I'd been maintaining their route at my own expense for years. The county official who'd attended asked to examine the documents and confirmed they looked authentic. The HOA never had authority to regulate my private road, I continued. I'd been subsidizing this neighborhood's infrastructure while being fined for improving my own property. Patty's desperate response was to claim the documents were fake or irrelevant. She insisted the HOA had established authority and threatened to have the county investigate my fraud. But you could see in her eyes that she knew the game had just changed completely. The reasonable neighbors immediately understood what this meant. Several approached me afterward, thanking me for maintaining the road and apologizing for not speaking up during the harassment campaign. I'm offering a Maple Grove Road cooperative agreement, I said. Residents pay a modest monthly fee for professional maintenance. I retain ownership but commit to community input. We end the current fines and legal threats, and everyone gets a properly maintained road. Patty refused to consider any compromise. She stormed out screaming that this wasn't over and threatening to sue me for blackmail. The local news ran the story that night. HOA road ownership dispute reveals private property rights. The video went viral on social media with comments overwhelmingly supporting me. I gave the community 1 week to respond to my proposal. Within 3 days, I'd received calls from over 20 interested neighbors. Mrs. Chun organized a road cooperative information meeting while Patty held a competing defense strategy meeting with her remaining supporters. When I really dug into Uncle Bob's paperwork, I discovered something that made the road ownership look like small potatoes. Uncle Bob hadn't just owned the road, his company, Morrison Development LLC, had originally developed the entire Willowbrook Estate subdivision back in the 1980s. Over 30 years, road maintenance had cost approximately $180,000. My recent $3,200 repair job had increased property values by an estimated $15,000 per home. Simple math, the neighborhood's 47 homes had collectively benefited by over $700,000 from my work alone. Your uncle was a good man, Mrs. Chen told me over tea. He never made anyone feel like they owed him, even though legally they did. Patty's regime represents a hostile takeover of what used to be a real community. I'd been subsidizing these people's infrastructure while they fined me for the privilege. The HOA budget showed zero allocation for road maintenance because they'd been freeloading on my inheritance for years. My plan was simple: educate the community about the true ownership structure, offer a reasonable compromise, and escalate to access restrictions only if the harassment continued. This was about respect and fairness, not revenge. I hired a professional surveyor to confirm the exact boundaries. The traffic engineer I consulted calculated fair usage fees based on actual vehicle counts. His conclusion: $50 per month per household would more than cover professional maintenance, snow removal, and emergency repairs. Emma created a neighborhood Facebook group called Fair HOA Governance and started documenting the harassment timeline. Her posts began attracting supporters I didn't even know I had. Meanwhile, Patty escalated her campaign. Monday morning, I found a sheriff's sale notice posted on my front door. She was actually trying to force the sale of my house to collect her imaginary fines. But she called the local news station claiming victory and scheduled a press conference to announce her successful enforcement action. I said nothing publicly. My attorney filed a motion to dismiss the lien. Turns out you can't just declare debts and force property sales without actual court judgments. But I didn't announce that victory yet. Through Emma's social media detective work, I discovered that Patty's husband Richard was facing an ethics investigation. His law practice was being accused of overcharging HOA clients and potentially kickback schemes with preferred contractors. Patty was using her HOA presidency to generate business for Richard's firm. Patty's media blitz backfired spectacularly. Her interview about maintaining community standards made her look petty and vindictive, especially when she claimed I represented a property value threat while standing next to the beautifully maintained road I'd fixed. That's when Patty made her biggest mistake yet. She organized a petition to remove the problem resident and started spreading rumors about my personal life and finances. She told people I was probably laundering money through fake road repairs. I made my decision. Friday evening, I sent a simple email to every household, community meeting, Sunday, 2 p.m., important information about road ownership. Patty responded by scheduling her own competing meeting for the same time, calling it emergency action against problem resident. She even invited county officials and local media, planning to have me publicly humiliated. Sunday arrived with crisp autumn air that makes everything feel like destiny. I arrived 30 minutes early with my attorney, the surveyor, and a briefcase full of documentation. The parking lot was already filling up, over 60 people, the largest gathering in neighborhood history. Patty had gone full drama queen. She'd set up a projector, invited the Channel 7 news crew again, and somehow convinced a county code enforcement officer and a sheriff's deputy to attend. For 20 minutes, she ranted about my unauthorized road modifications, showed enlarged photos of my work, and claimed my defiance was threatening everyone's property values. She even brought props, a ruler for measuring grass height and printed copies of fake violations she'd invented. This resident, she declared, pointing directly at me, has shown complete disregard for our community's standards. Today, we vote to ban him from all common areas and pursue criminal charges for fraud and property destruction. When Patty finally finished, she smugly offered me a chance to respond. Instead, I stood up calmly, walked to the front of the room, and placed my surveyor's boundary map on the table where everyone could see it. Before we discuss road violations, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room, let's clarify who actually owns the road we're talking about. I unfolded the original development deed and inheritance documentation showing how Maple Grove Lane had never been public property. Every single resident, including Patty, had been using my private road for access without permission or payment. I inherited this road from my uncle, who developed this entire subdivision in the 1980s. For the past 5 years, I've been maintaining your access route at my own expense while being fined for improving my own property. The county official asked to examine the documents. The surveyor confirmed the boundaries. The sheriff's deputy looked increasingly uncomfortable as he realized Patty had called him to a civil property dispute. Patty's response was pure desperation. She claimed my documents were fabricated, that I was running some kind of elaborate scam. But you could see in her eyes that she knew the game was over. I offered my reasonable solution one final time, a road cooperative where residents paid modest monthly fees for professional maintenance. I'd retain ownership but commit to community input. Patty's meltdown was spectacular. She refused any compromise, screaming that I was blackmailing the community. When she realized the room wasn't buying her hysteria, she stormed out with her core supporters, yelling that this isn't over. Mrs. Chen immediately stood up and started organizing the reasonable neighbors who wanted to discuss the cooperative proposal. About 35 households expressed serious interest. The news crew interviewed both sides afterward. Patty's on-camera rant made her look completely unhinged, while my calm explanation came across as totally sensible. That night, the story went viral on local social media. But the real victory was seeing neighbors actually talking to each other again instead of hiding behind curtains and avoiding eye contact. I thought the Sunday meeting had ended things, but Patty had one more card to play. She set a deadline for Friday at 5 p.m., demanding I cease all fraudulent claims or face full legal consequences. Friday evening, I arrived at the community center parking lot with my attorney, surveyor, and a stack of professional private road Morrison Development LLC signs ready to install. Patty had organized what she called a Save Our Neighborhood rally. She'd brought her husband Richard and 3 of his lawyer friends. Mrs. Chen stepped forward to facilitate the discussion as our neighborhood's unofficial elder stateswoman. I presented my road cooperative proposal one final time, $50 per month per household for professional maintenance, transparent accounting, community input on major decisions, and a 5-year rate lock. Patty's counterattack was pure theater. She claimed my ownership was just a legal technicality and that the community had established rights through decades of use. "This man," she shrieked, "is holding our entire neighborhood hostage. He's demanding we pay him for the privilege of driving to our own homes." Tom, the contractor, stepped up and delivered the perfect reality check. He explained the actual costs of road maintenance and calculated how much money I'd personally saved everyone over the years. "Jake's been subsidizing this whole neighborhood," Tom said. "That road would have cost us $50,000 to fix properly. He did it for $3,000 and asked for nothing." I made my final offer, reducing the fee to $40 per month and including winter snow removal. "I'm giving everyone until Sunday to decide. After that, I'll be installing private road signage and requiring usage agreements for all vehicles." Patty announced that if anyone signed my extortion contract, she would personally sue them for conspiracy to commit fraud. She claimed she'd found a way to build an alternate access road. The county official finally spoke up, "Ma'am, there are no available easements for alternate access. The cost would exceed $2 million, and it would take 3 to 5 years minimum." "Mrs. Hendress," I said calmly, "you've spent 6 months fining me for maintaining my own property while your husband's law firm collected fees from every HOA enforcement action. You've harassed elderly residents and turned this neighborhood into a war zone. I'm offering a fair solution that benefits everyone. But if you prefer to build a $2 million road to avoid paying $40 a month, that's your choice. Just remember, you'll still need to cross my property to get to your construction site." The informal vote was swift and decisive. 35 households supported the cooperative agreement, 8 were undecided, and only Patty's core group of 6 households rejected it outright. Saturday morning, I installed the professional signage, private road, authorized access only signs went up at both ends of Maple Grove Lane with a 30-day grace period notice. Patty tried one last desperate gambit, organizing neighbors to remove the signs and calling police to report vandalism of public property. The sheriff's deputy who responded took one look at my ownership documentation and politely explained to Patty that I had every legal right to mark my own property. 6 months later, Willowbrook Estates is a completely different place. The Maple Grove Road Cooperative is officially incorporated with 37 participating households paying their monthly fees through a simple online system. The road has never looked better: professional maintenance, proper drainage, and even decorative plantings along the edges. Patty's reign of terror ended exactly the way you'd expect. She lost the HOA presidency in an emergency election 3 weeks after our showdown. Her husband Richard's law practice collapsed after the county ethics investigation found systematic overcharging and kickback schemes. The family quietly listed their house for sale within 6 months and moved to a different state. I receive emails from homeowners across the country facing similar HOA abuse, all looking for advice on fighting back. The local news did a follow-up story on HOA reform. Our case has been referenced in 3 different property rights lawsuits as an example of how private road cooperatives can work. But the real victory is seeing Mrs. Chen's rose garden in full bloom again. She organized a neighborhood welcome committee that actually welcomes new residents. Our annual road maintenance meeting has become a community social event where people plan block parties and coordinate babysitting swaps. Property values have increased an average of $12,000 per home since we established professional road maintenance. The road cooperative has built up a healthy reserve fund for future repairs. Everyone saves money compared to typical HOA assessments, and we get transparent accounting. The psychological transformation in the neighborhood is even more impressive. People wave to each other again. Kids play in the street without parents worrying about violation notices. The Facebook group Emma created has evolved into genuine community organizing for positive projects. I never intended to become a community activist. This whole experience taught me that sometimes ordinary people have to stand up to bullies even when it's uncomfortable. Most importantly, I discovered that principled resistance can create positive change when you're fighting for something bigger than yourself. We've established the Fair HOA Advocacy Fund using some of the cooperative surplus funds. It provides legal resources for homeowners facing abuse. 3 neighboring communities have adopted similar cooperative models after seeing our success. My favorite outcome is watching Emma, now a college freshman studying public policy, use this experience in her coursework about grassroots organizing and community development. She credits our road war with inspiring her career path. Last week, I got a call from a homeowner in the next county dealing with a similar situation: pool maintenance company monopoly with HOA board members getting kickbacks. I'm meeting with them next weekend to share our documentation strategies and cooperative model. The annual road maintenance meeting is next month, and Mrs. Chen is organizing a neighborhood potluck to go with it. Tom the contractor is donating materials for some decorative stonework at the entrance. We're planning a small festival in the fall to celebrate our 2nd anniversary. This is what community actually looks like when people choose cooperation over control, transparency over corruption, and fairness over fear. So here's my challenge to you: if you're dealing with HOA abuse, petty authoritarians, or any situation where someone's using a little bit of power to make your life miserable, fight back. Document everything. Research your rights. Build alliances. And don't let bullies win through intimidation. Drop a comment and share your own HOA nightmare story. Let's build a community of people who refuse to be pushed around by power-hungry neighbors. And if you want to see more stories about ordinary people standing up to institutional bullies, hit that subscribe button. Sometimes the best revenge is just refusing to be a victim.